A desperate farmer faces the worst drought of his life, but an unexpected event changes everything. In Willow Creek, Tom McAllister struggles against the relentless drought that threatens to destroy his farm and erase generations of history. When a storm emerges, bringing signs of hope, he faces an impossible decision: save his land or sell everything to a large corporation. But an unexpected discovery could change the game. The suffocating heat of Texas enveloped Tom McAllister as he watched his farm crumble before his eyes. The relentless sun had been beating down on the land for months, turning the once fertile soil into a hard, cracked surface. The plants that once promised a bountiful harvest were now nothing more than dry skeletons, bending under the weight of their own desolation. The farm, which had sustained his family for generations, seemed on the brink of extinction. Tom stepped off the porch, feeling the hot, dry ground beneath his boots. Each step he took kicked up a small cloud of dust that quickly disappeared into the dry air. He knelt beside a row of dead corn, picking up a handful of earth that crumbled like ashes in his hand. The smell of dry, barren earth filled his nostrils, reminding him of all he was losing. "It can't end like this," he murmured to himself, his gaze lost on the horizon where the blue sky seemed to merge with the arid land. Each day without rain was an affront to his determination, a constant struggle against the helplessness growing within him. The stories of his grandfather, who had bought that land with his life savings, came to his mind with painful frequency. The legacy his father had expanded and made prosperous was crumbling in his hands, and he found himself unable to stop it. Back at the house, bills piled up on the kitchen table. Tom ran his fingers over the sealed envelopes, knowing their contents were a relentless reminder of the mounting debt devouring his farm. The bank had been patient at first, but now that patience had worn thin, and the threats of foreclosure were becoming more and more real. Tom walked to the barn, where the cattle, once robust and healthy, were now thin and sickly, struggling to survive. The strong smell of dry straw and manure mixed in the air as Tom ran his hand over the back of a cow that could barely lift its head. "Hang in there, girl," he whispered, though he knew his words were as dry as the ground beneath his feet. One afternoon, after another frustrating meeting at the bank, Tom ran into his neighbor Charlie at the local convenience store. Charlie, his face marked by the sun and hands calloused from hard work, knew Tom's struggles well. The drought was the main topic of conversation in town, but Tom's situation seemed the most critical. "Tom, you look like a ghost," Charlie said, with evident concern in his voice. "We're all struggling, but you seem to be carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." Tom sighed, feeling the real weight of that comment. "I don't know what to do anymore, Charlie. I feel like I'm about to lose everything. This land, it's all I have. I can't let it go like this." Charlie, always practical, suggested that Tom visit Father Miguel, who was known for helping people in difficult situations. Tom, who had never been a man of faith, hesitated, but the lack of options made him consider the idea. Maybe, in his hopelessness, a different perspective could bring some light. That night, as the day's heat slowly dissipated, Tom looked up at the starry sky and made a decision. The next day, he would visit Father Miguel. Maybe, just maybe, he would find something that would give him a new direction. The next morning brought a rare freshness, a breeze that seemed almost merciful after the relentless heat of recent months. Tom woke up before sunrise, feeling a mixture of anxiety and hope. He put on his least worn-out shirt, donned the hat he'd worn for years, and began walking towards the small church in the center of Willow Creek. As he walked through the still sleeping streets of the town, the sound of his footsteps echoed in the morning silence. The houses, many as old as Tom's farm, were immersed in shadows, with their doors closed and windows dark. The church appeared before him, its white walls standing out against the sky that was beginning to brighten. The simple bell tower, crowned with a cross, was a silent reminder of the faith many there sought in times of need. Tom hesitated as he reached the church door. It had been years since he had entered, and the weight of his disbelief made him feel like an intruder. He took a deep breath, pushing the heavy wooden door, which creaked softly as it opened. The interior of the church was cool and serene, a stark contrast to the world outside. The walls were decorated with religious images that seemed to watch him as he walked towards the altar. Father Miguel stood before the altar, lighting candles with a calm that Tom envied. The soft smell of wax and incense filled the air, creating an atmosphere of reverence that Tom couldn't ignore. "Good morning, Tom," said Father Miguel, turning with a welcoming smile. His eyes shone with an understanding that Tom didn't expect to find. "Good morning, Father," Tom replied, taking off his hat and holding it in his hands, like a shamed boy. "It's been a while since I've seen you here," Father Miguel commented, with a tone that mixed curiosity and understanding. "Yes, the farm keeps me busy," Tom said, trying to justify his absence. "But today I don't know who else to turn to," he admitted, feeling his voice tremble slightly. Father Miguel nodded, as if he already knew what was coming. "Let's talk, Tom. Come, sit here with me." He indicated a nearby pew, and the two sat, the father facing Tom, who kept his gaze fixed on the floor. Tom began to speak, his voice a whisper in the church's silence. He poured out his heart about the devastating drought, the loss of crops, the sick cattle, and the crushing pressure of the debts. Each word that came out of his mouth seemed to relieve a bit of the weight he carried on his shoulders. Father Miguel listened in silence, without interrupting, offering only small gestures of encouragement. When Tom finally finished speaking, Father Miguel remained silent for a few moments, as if carefully choosing his words. "Tom," he began, his voice gentle and full of compassion. "I understand your pain and anguish. Life puts us before challenges that sometimes seem insurmountable. But I believe there is always light, even in the darkest moments." Tom sighed, feeling somewhat relieved, but still skeptical. "With all due respect, Father, I don't know if faith can make it rain or pay my debts. I need something more concrete," he said with a tone of despair. Father Miguel smiled softly, an expression of patience and understanding on his face. "Sometimes solutions come from where we least expect, Tom. I want you to come with me to the sacristy." Intrigued, Tom followed the father to the small room behind the altar. Father Miguel opened a drawer and took out a small cloth bag, which he handed to Tom. "What is this?" Tom asked, curious. "These are seeds," explained Father Miguel. "Seeds I received from a farmer in a remote village in Mexico during a pilgrimage. He told me these seeds brought blessings to his lands, even in the hardest times. I want you to plant them around your main crop and pray with faith." Tom looked at the bag in his hands, feeling a mixture of skepticism and hope. "I don't know what to think, Father, but if I have no other option, I'll do it." Returning home, Tom decided to follow Father Miguel's advice. He chose a space around his main crop, dug small holes in the dry earth, and planted the seeds, murmuring a silent prayer, asking for a miracle. The weeks that followed brought growing agony for Tom McAllister. The land he had cared for so diligently now seemed an extension of his own despair. The seeds he planted in hopes of a miracle remained buried beneath the hardened crust of the soil, showing no signs of life. Each morning, Tom would walk to the fields, expecting to see some green sprout, but all he found was the same desolate landscape as before. The sun continued to beat down on the farm, turning the soil into an almost impenetrable surface. The plants that once promised a bountiful harvest were now reduced to a painful memory of what could have been. The corn, which once swayed in the wind like a green sea, was now just a cluster of dry, brittle stalks, bending under the weight of their own death. The cattle, once the pride of Tom's farm, were in a pitiful state. The animals, thin and sickly, could barely stand, and Tom knew that soon he would have to make the difficult decision to sell them for meager prices or worse, sacrifice them. The smell of death hung in the air, mingling with the smell of dry straw and dust that seemed to permeate every corner of the farm. Meanwhile, the bills continued to arrive, piling up on the kitchen table. Tom knew time was running out. The bank had sent another notice, warning him that foreclosure was imminent. Each letter he opened made him feel more and more cornered. He was at a crossroads. Sell the farm for a pittance or wait helplessly as the property was taken away. Both options were unacceptable, but he knew the clock was ticking. One night, after an exhausting day trying to keep the few remaining animals alive, Tom sat on the porch, a cup of cold coffee in his hands. The sky was clear, with not a single cloud in sight, and the stars shone with cruel indifference. He looked towards the horizon, where the sky and earth met in a line that seemed to stretch on forever. He felt defeated, a man fighting against forces he could not control. Maybe it's time to give up, he murmured to himself, feeling the weight of the words as the warm wind swayed the dried-out trees around the house. Martha, his wife, came out of the house and sat beside him. She looked at him with tenderness but also with concern. Martha had always been a strong woman, a rock in times of difficulty. She had supported Tom in all his decisions, even the most difficult ones. However, the current situation was beyond what she could comfort with words. "Tom, I know things are bad, but we've faced challenges before," she said, trying to keep hope alive. "Somehow, we always find a way." Tom squeezed Martha's hand, feeling grateful to have her by his side. But he knew this time was different. "It's never been this bad, Martha. I never thought the day would come when I'd consider selling the farm, but here we are." Martha looked at him with eyes full of love and understanding. "You've always been a man of principles, Tom. I know how much this land means to you, to us, but maybe it's time to think about a new beginning. Selling the farm doesn't mean we've failed. It means we're being realistic." Tom couldn't stop a tear from escaping his eyes and running down his face. He knew Martha was right, but the thought of giving up the farm, of everything he and his family had fought to build, was almost unbearable. That night, Tom stayed awake, staring at the bedroom ceiling while Martha slept beside him. He reflected on her words, on the uncertain future that awaited them, and began to accept the painful reality that maybe it was time to leave the farm behind. But something inside him still resisted, a small flame of hope that refused to be completely extinguished. The next morning, the decision was made. Tom woke up before sunrise, determined to put the farm up for sale. Though the decision left him deeply saddened, he knew he could no longer delay the inevitable. Martha accompanied him in silence as he gathered the necessary papers, feeling the weight of the decision they were both about to make. As Tom organized the documents on the kitchen table, something unusual happened. A distant thunder rumbled through the air, breaking the morning silence. Tom lifted his head, incredulous, thinking he might be imagining things. He ran to the porch and looked at the sky, where a dark, heavy cloud was forming on the horizon. The cool breeze that accompanied it was unlike anything he had felt in recent months. Martha joined him, looking at the sky with a mix of hope and disbelief. "Could it be?" she murmured, not taking her eyes off the approaching clouds. The thunder rumbled again, this time closer. Before they could react, the first drops of rain began to fall, timid at first, but quickly turning into a torrential downpour. Tom and Martha stood there, paralyzed, watching the blessed water finally arrive to flood the fields, fill the wells, and transform the arid landscape into a vision of renewed hope. The storm seemed endless, as if the entire sky was pouring its accumulated fury over Willow Creek. Tom felt the rain soak his clothes, running down his face like tears he hadn't been able to cry. He closed his eyes and lifted his face to the sky, feeling the water wash over his weary soul. When the rain finally stopped, it was already dawn. The silence that followed was almost deafening, interrupted only by the constant dripping of water from the trees and rooftops. Tom couldn't sleep, eager to see the state of his crops. When the sun finally rose, he ran to the fields with Martha close behind. What they found was nothing short of a miracle. The corn crops, which had been on the brink of death, were now revitalized, with green, vibrant leaves full of life. The soil, which had been hard and cracked, was now soft and moist, exuding the fresh scent of wet earth. Tom fell to his knees, feeling a mix of gratitude, relief, and a new hope growing within him. "Martha, you won't believe what happened," he exclaimed, still breathless, calling for her. Together, they walked through the field, observing the changes the rain had brought. But the biggest shock came when Tom approached the spot where he had planted Father Miguel's seeds. Around the main crop, plants he had never seen before had sprouted. They were large flowers, with vibrant petals that seemed to reflect the sunlight in a unique way. "These are the seeds Father Miguel gave me," Tom explained, still in disbelief. "I didn't know what to expect, but look at this." Martha, still impressed by the scene, gently touched one of the flowers, feeling its unusual texture. "Tom, this is incredible. These plants, they might be the answer to everything we've been facing." In the days that followed, Tom began to realize that these rare plants could represent a new chance for his farm. He knew there were still many challenges ahead, but for the first time in months, he felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of his situation. Determined to learn more, Tom decided to seek help from his son Mike, who worked as a biologist at a university. After the discovery of the mysterious plants that had grown around his corn crop, Tom immediately contacted his son Mike, who worked as a biologist at a university in the city. Mike, intrigued by the description of the plants, decided to visit the farm to investigate further. Upon arrival, he was impressed by what he found. "Dad, this is incredible," Mike said as he examined the vibrant flowers surrounding the main crop. "These plants are not common. I've never seen anything like them in our region." Tom, full of curiosity and hope, watched as Mike collected samples for analysis. "Do you think they might be valuable? Maybe something that could help us save the farm?" Tom asked, trying to contain the growing hope in his chest. Mike nodded as he continued to examine the plants. "They certainly seem promising. I'll take some samples to the lab and see what I can discover. It might be that these plants have properties we don't know about, and who knows, this could open new possibilities for the farm." The days that followed were filled with anxiety for Tom. He knew the fate of his farm might depend on the results of Mike's analysis. During this period of waiting, Tom revisited his conversations with Father Miguel and Martha's words. He knew he was at a decisive moment, where each decision could change the course of his life and his family's legacy. Finally, Mike returned with the conclusions. He arrived at the farm with a smile that Tom hadn't seen in months. "Dad," Mike began with a gleam in his eyes, "you won't believe this. These plants contain a unique substance that can be used in biofuel production. It's something researchers have been trying to develop for years, and here on your farm, they grew naturally." Tom was speechless. He looked at Martha, who was beside him, and saw the same mix of shock and hope reflected in her eyes. "This means these plants could be worth much more than any corn crop," Mike continued. "If we can produce this on a large scale, it could be the solution we need to keep the farm running and, who knows, even prosper." The news brought a mixture of relief and excitement to the McAllister family. Tom, who had almost lost hope, now saw a new possibility unfolding before him. But along with this new opportunity came new responsibilities and difficult decisions. Mike suggested that they seek out agricultural and energy specialists to explore the potential of the plants. He also mentioned the possibility of partnering with the university, which could invest in infrastructure and development on the farm itself, without the family having to give up their land. Tom and Martha knew this was a unique opportunity, but they also understood that they needed to be careful. The farm had been through so many difficulties, and the last thing they wanted was to make rash decisions that could risk everything again. Meanwhile, news about the rare plants and their possible scientific applications began to spread. Soon, the small farm in Willow Creek became the center of attention, attracting the curiosity of researchers, companies, and even the government. Proposals began to arrive, some offering large sums of money to acquire the farm and the rights to the plants. One of the country's largest energy companies, TerraTech, sent a representative to negotiate directly with Tom. The man, dressed in an elegant suit and with a calculated smile, got straight to the point. "Mr. McAllister, TerraTech is willing to pay a significant sum for your farm and the exclusive rights to these plants. We can transform your property into a cutting-edge biofuel production center. This will ensure your family's financial security for generations." Tom took the document the representative handed him but couldn't avoid the discomfort he felt at the thought of selling the farm. He knew the proposal was tempting, but he also knew what it would mean. The farm would no longer be the home his family knew. He remembered Martha's words about the importance of thinking about the future, but something inside him hesitated. Martha noticed her husband's inner conflict and, with her soft yet firm voice, advised him, "Tom, maybe we should think carefully before making any decision. This is a big change." Tom knew the decision he was about to make could change everything, and he needed to be careful. Feeling the weight of responsibility, he decided he needed more time to reflect. The farm, which had been a symbol of struggle and resilience for his family, was now on the brink of a transformation he had never imagined. Tom spent the next few days in deep reflection. The offers he had received were tempting, especially TerraTech's, which offered not only an immediate financial solution but also the promise of a secure future for his family. However, something inside him resisted the idea. Selling the farm would mean giving up a piece of his identity, a legacy his ancestors had built with so much effort. Martha, sensing Tom's internal conflict, continued to support him without pressuring him to make an immediate decision. "Tom, whatever the decision, we'll face it together," she said, with a look full of understanding. Her words were a constant reminder that, no matter what happened, they would still have each other. Tom finally decided he needed to talk to Mike about the university partnership idea. They sat on the farm's porch, watching the sunset as they discussed the possibilities. "Dad, I think this could be a chance to keep the farm alive while also embracing something new," Mike said, encouragingly. "The university is willing to invest in infrastructure and research, and this could bring benefits not only to us but to the entire community." Mike's words echoed in Tom's mind. The university's proposal offered a path that respected the past and embraced the future. It wasn't just a matter of money. It was an opportunity to preserve his family's legacy while also innovating. After much reflection, Tom made his decision. He and Mike organized a meeting with the university representatives. The researchers and administrators were impressed with the potential of the rare plants that had grown on the farm and agreed to establish an agricultural research center on the McAllister property. They offered resources to build laboratories, hire specialists, and ensure the farm could continue its normal operations. The partnership brought new life to the McAllister farm. The research on the rare plants progressed rapidly, and soon it was discovered that the flowers had extraordinary potential for the production of sustainable biofuel, something that could revolutionize the energy industry. In addition, the plants showed promising medicinal properties, attracting even more scientific interest. The presence of the university not only revitalized the farm but also brought benefits to the Willow Creek community. New jobs were created, and the local economy began to recover. The small town, which once seemed on the brink of oblivion, now flourished alongside Tom's crops. Martha, always involved in farm activities, organized community events to integrate the residents and researchers. The McAllister farm became a symbol of resilience and innovation, a place where tradition and modernity met. The residents, who once saw the farm as an example of struggle and hardship, now saw it as a beacon of hope and progress. Tom, now older, looked at his farm with pride. He had made the right decision, preserving his family's legacy while also contributing to a promising future. Sitting on the porch with Martha, watching the field bathed in the soft light of sunset, he felt a deep peace, a sense of mission accomplished. "You know, Martha," he said, holding her hand, "I never imagined that such a terrible drought could bring us so many blessings in disguise." Martha smiled, squeezing his hand. "Sometimes it takes facing the greatest adversities to find the true path, Tom. And together, we've found a new way to live." With these words, the two remained there in silence, appreciating the tranquility of the moment. The farm, which had faced so many challenges, was now flourishing again, ready for a new chapter in the McAllister family's history. And as the stars began to appear in the sky above them, Tom knew that his legacy was safe, prepared to be passed on to future generations.